Done.
Okay. So we have our next speaker, Suman Chakrabarti. He would be walking us towards turning virtual machines cloud native using KubeVirt. He's passionate about cloud native technologies and is micro blogger in different social platforms, involved in many community members and speakers with Collabnix, Cloud Native, and Data Management Group. He has also been a speaker in CF sponsored community events such as Camp Cloud Native on various cloud native topics. When not at work, Suman travels to various places and loves to explore different cultures and tradition. This was a quick intro on Suman. With that, hello, Suman, can you hear us?
Yeah, hi, Sabita. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Thanks for the quick introduction. Yeah. So, can I start then?
Yes, you can. Can you share your slides?
Yeah.
Just try to share your slides. I'll let you know if they are popping in.
Yep.
Okay. Yes,
Hopefully.
you're good to go.
Okay. Cool. Okay. So, hi everyone. So today in this OSCON event, I'm going to present on the topic, very interesting topic called as KubeVirt, and it is all about making your virtual machines work on orchestrator platforms like Kubernetes. So let us see what it's all about. So before going into the technology, let's see till what what is the main existence currently. So let's explore the story so far. So how we are currently managing the infra workloads. So for this container infrastructure and automation, it's actually provided by the bare metal Kubernetes installation that we can directly install on top of rack servers and bare metals, or it is being provided through some managed service providers such as Red Hat, coming from the Red Hat offerings such as OpenShift, Rancher Labs. For virtualized workloads, they are not going anywhere fast. So they are like the traditional ways of running software and applications, which are kind of running a different operating systems, or maybe difficult to move into the current containerization platform. And like there are IS providers such as VMware, OpenStack, who are directly supporting running these virtual machines. So then the question comes, how we basically leads to creating a converged infrastructure, how we can bring these two workloads together. So in a general sense, container workloads are kind of like immortal workloads. So they can be created and they can get deleted at any point of time, while virtual machines are kind of like mortal workloads which stays for certain point of time. You can do changes and then you can adapt newer versions into a running virtual machines. So let's see what's the solution being offered in this case, like how we can run containers and virtual machines on a single platform. Okay, so the idea behind this is that you have to actually make your virtual machine work inside a container. Well, to think about this is a little bit dicey here, because we cannot really think a virtual machine running inside a container. But yes, that can be possible now. So basically, the idea here is to leverage the same functionality that virtual machines offer you running on traditional bare metal servers, and use that same functionality to create a kind of a environment within your orchestration platform. So that means we would be running both the containers, both the virtual machines side by side. And normally for virtual machines to work, we need a kind of an emulator, whether you are providing through an hardware assisted emulator such as KVM, or through a software assisted emulation technology such as through QEMU. Okay, now then how we actually formalize the solution. So what we are thinking is kind of means it may think about like it is kind of a hypothetical situation, but no, it's actually possible now. So it is through the implementation of KubeVirt which has been achieved. So what is then KubeVirt? So KubeVirt is basically a technology that basically turns your existing container orchestrators such as Kubernetes in managing both your container workloads as well as virtual machines. It was initially started in 2016 at Red Hat, but now there are many companies such as SAP, Cisco, HP, all are now contributing this current project. And this was open source in Jan 2017, and the code lies very much well in the public repository, and it is now into the CNCF sandbox project and got inducted in 2019. So yeah, it's formally a CNCF project actually now. And it's Apache 2.0 license because of the open source condition. So how this solution actually looks like. So if you see on a very high level note, it's basically the KubeVirt orchestrator managing your application workload, which is actually running on a virtual machine inside something called as a pod, which in native way we define on a Kubernetes based orchestrator. And in the similar way, you would be deploying your Kubernetes orchestrator the same Kubernetes resources, such as pod, the same way how you're defining that, how you're defining it a normal way. So that is the normal way how you're managing within a KubeVirt solution. So let us go a little bit more into the depth in understanding the solution. So first of all, why we need a KubeVirt-like solution? Because there's a growing velocity in adopting this kind of solution, and also because there has been a huge adoption of Kubernetes since the time it has actually come into the open source ecosystem. Like almost all the companies have basically you make it as a de facto standard of basically running the containers, and many other cloud providers are also providing certain managed services behind it. So it has a very huge ecosystem where basically we can create solutions such as KubeVirt. And reality is that users have to deal with virtual machines for coming days ahead. It's not like we are creating containers. That means down the line, next like 5 years, we would be completely doing away with virtual machines. It is going to stay, because there are certain requirements and there are certain applications that still needs certain that still needs deploying certain virtual appliance on your infrastructure. And the focus on building a transition path for your users that will either never be containerized. Like, so we have to also think about what about those workloads which cannot be containerized, from the technical reasons that may be like using certain older operating system or kernel, which is difficult to actually create a container image of those older operating systems, or certain business reasons, like the time that you actually create a complete shift from making this monolithic to work on microservice based platforms. So it also increases the cost of conversion in this process. So coming into then what KubeVirt offers in the plate for us. So it's basically running your virtual machines within the pods using the existing container runtime. So that is important to understand. So prior to that, there has been many other solutions where it was approached to create certain environment where basically we can create virtual machines on a container-based platform, but then it was using different container runtimes. And so the idea is to retain a singular generic container runtime that would support both your virtual machine within the pods as well basically run your containers. Second is the implementation of how we are making virtual machine run within an orchestrator platform is basically leveraging the declarative API model of the Kubernetes, which Kubernetes offers to us. Okay, so basically it's just we are creating certain custom resource definitions, creating our own object around it, and then using the same Kubernetes features to help it to deploy on the infrastructure side. It has a tight integration with cluster level features such as storage, network services. It has a integration with the node level features where you can actually pin the pages, and then you can monitor the CPU managers, and then you can actually configure different networking plugins that is available. And basically the focus is to create a unified platform, kind of an orchestrator platform, that will have a Kubernetes native look and behavior, where you run the similar commands to manage both your virtual machines as well as your containers together. So coming into let's deep dive what are those components which actually makes your KubeVirt solution. So first is the Virt API server. So Virt API server serves as an entry point, just like we have in Kubernetes as a Kube API server, but this is the entry point for you for all the virtualization which is related to creating your custom resource definition object. So in KubeVirt, we define something called as a virtual machine as a primary resource in synonymous to something which is like pods in the Kubernetes environment. And then we define something called as a virtual machine instance as the custom resource definition to match particular resource. So this is the API server which is taking care of authenticating and authorizing and validating this particular resource, which comes while defining or basically triggering on the Kubernetes platform. So ideally in this, basically if you can see this YAML definitions, we have something where we define how our VM should be deployed, and we have defined as a Kubernetes pod resource type, which is called as a VM, kind VM. Instead of kind pod, we are mentioning kind VM. And this has been possible because of using this API version kubevirt.io, which is kind of like extended over your normal Kubernetes API feature. And then basically you would be defining something called as a domain. The domain is something which is basically created by LiveVirt. LiveVirt is basically responsible for providing that emulation which runs your VM actually within that container environment. Through the Kubernetes scheduling, you would be scheduling that how much resources would be required in terms of the CPU and the memory, just like how you basically create a pod definition. And then you can also mention the storage definition, such as what would be your persistent volume that you would be defining, and what would be the claim that you would be creating to access those persistent volumes through the Kubernetes volume resource here. So Virt Launcher is the second component. So it basically uses the LiveVirt to manage your lifecycle process of the entire VM. So basically it is just like managing once the VM gets deployed, how the VM should be launched within that pod. So that entire lifecycle is managed by the Virt Launcher. Takes care both of your volumes as well as the container networking part, and it basically is responsible for providing the C groups and namespaces which will be required to run the VMI processes. So if you see here, whenever we create a VM instance within a container, it needs something called as a LiveVirt, as I was telling. So the LiveVirt is responsible for starting the VMI processes within that particular VM. And this would then require to be mounted to a shared storage, and where you can either mount the data, the volumes that would be used to store the data, and etc. And other than that, from the storage side, there is that networking part. So basically, in a normal environment where an individual VM gets an IP, here the IP would be managed through the pod, actually, just like how we are managing the normal Kubernetes platform. So in a pod, we create one or more than one containers which basically share the same context. So similar is the concept here. The VM doesn't get any IP within the pod. It's that the pod which gets an IP. And you can basically connect a different type of CNI plugins that will be basically that can work seamlessly with both the type of workloads that you are creating here. Okay, so the next thing that comes is the Virt controller. Virt controller is something which is responsible, just like your Kube controller, to manage the overall. It actually manages the overall states of the pod. Like means what is the current state of the pod that you have deployed, where that virtual machine is running, and it just basically looks out for the virtual machine as the type of resources, because it will not manage any other Kubernetes resources. And it's managing these VM groups together. So just like in a Kubernetes environment, we deploy something called as a replica set that will manage more than one instance of the pod together. Here also similar, we define something called as a virtual machine instance replica set, which will manage more than one virtual instance together. It's just the same analogy, but it is being extended. I mean, using the API model, the Kubernetes API model. So the next thing that comes is the vote handler. Vote handler is something which basically runs on individually on your worker nodes, as the daemon said, and it is basically responsible for looking out for any changes on the VMI side. So VMI is that the virtual machine instance object where you basically define how we are going to create your VM. And it is just, you can understand, similar to the work of a kubelet. So it will basically check the status of the VMs which is getting created within that pod. It will manage the state of the pod. It will try to do certain preliminary steps of like starting the virtual machines within that particular pod, and even it reports the status to the cluster so that the reconciliation is maintained, both from what it is desired for the virtual machine to be created and the actual running state of the VM within that cluster. So it is something like that, how the vote handler reacts to the once like it gets an invocation from the controller, it basically creates a vote launcher, and that basically launches the libvirt to basically start the VM within that pod actually. Okay, so this is the whole KubeVirt anatomy where we can actually see how the flow happens. So if I say in a very simple sense, whenever you request, let's say, for example, I request creating a VM on my Kubernetes platform. So this request would be first validated by the API server. It will check whether this is a generic request where like the resources that you're defining, that you have defined are kind of native to the Kubernetes platform, or it's a CRD definition. So if it's a CRD definition, vote controller will basically take control of it. So basically the vote controller will check that particular CRD definition, which is defined as a VMI that contains a VM type resource. And then basically once it gets that particular resource, it creates a pod and schedules it in one of the worker nodes. So prior to scheduling the pod, that particular resource would also be authenticated through the Vert API, just to check whether the CRD resource is aligned to the actual definition which has been given on that particular platform. And then the Vert, once the pod gets scheduled and it starts running, then the Vert controller basically assigns something called as the host name to the Vert handler, because host name is something very relevant here in the context of creating a VM, because it is where, based on that, the libvirt takes into action. Means it basically kicks certain processes based on that. And once it basically gets that, it triggers the Vert launcher to create a domain which will ultimately launch that libvirt that will trigger creation of the VM within the pod definition. So this is in the same context where you are also running your containers within your existing platform that are contained within the pod. And so you have both the kubelet managing the pods that are actually running your KubeVirt components, as well as the pod where you are actually running your containers. And the good thing about here is that you are using the same runtime. So you don't have to go or switch to a different runtime to create that particular virtual machine type of resource here. Okay, so I think it's enough of talk, and let's go and check out a live demo. So basically, okay, so I'll basically show you. So basically, the idea here is that you can actually create a kind of this KubeVirt environment on any environment. So I'll be showing this on Catacode environment, but you can actually create this on Minikube. You can use Kind clusters to create it. Even you can deploy it on your bare metal servers. The only prerequisite is that you need to basically set up your software emulation, which would be created as a config map, which I'll be showing you. That will help you to start that particular virtual machine. Okay, so I have already Node running in my cluster. Okay, so it's not ready state. We'll just wait for 2 minutes to come to ready. Okay, it's now in ready. So I'll just go to my gist and I'll just show you how simple it's to basically deploy a virtual machine inside a container. So first, what I will try to do, I will try to get the latest KubeVirt version. So KubeVirt is basically downloaded from the GitHub repository, as I showed you, which is the github.com repos KubeVirt. And from their releases, I will just take the latest one. And I got the latest one, which is 0.30.5. Okay. Next, basically installing KubeVirt is not just installing a CRD definition. It's basically the logic of implementing certain functionality rules and certain business rules together. So basically, the KubeVirt operator, the KubeVirt controller is deployed as a main operator here. So we'll be using that to deploy our primary KubeVirt component. And you can see once I does that, it basically creates for me a namespace for a KubeVirt. It basically creates a custom resource definition extension for me. It basically creates certain cluster role definition. It creates a service account and gives me certain permissions on the cluster and the role binding, because ideally I don't want this to impact any existing resource that are already running. So I create everything on a separate schema altogether. So I'll basically look into the existing namespace whether my pods are up and running. Yeah. So the primary Virt operator is deployed through this operator definition. And next, what we have to do, as I told you, we have to basically set up the KEMU as a software emulation, because I'm not really using KVM here since it's a category environment. And for that, I just created a config map. So just to show you what this config map contains. Oh, sorry, its name is okay. So here you can see that I have just enabled the emulator. This is the emulator to be used in this particular deployment that I'll be using. Okay. So next is basically I'll be triggering the custom resource for the KubeVirt deployment, and basically it will start creating a set of pods for me where it will deploy all those components which we just saw as pods here. So I'll just keep a watcher here just to see the pods creation. So it's pretty interesting that the KubeVirt component, which which basically is responsible for creating this virtual machine, is itself running as a pod within the Kubernetes deployment. So they are actually deployed in their own namespace. So we have good amount of isolation here. And I'll just wait for all the components to be up and running. Okay, I think it has come up. Just check once the status. Yes. So next is basically to access this virtual machines that we are deploying within this platform. We can directly use the kubectl as primary the CLI tool to use it. But then KubeVirt also provides their own native CLI tool, which is called as a virtctl, which basically help you to manipulate different actions on this VM. Like for example, starting the VM, stopping the VM, like then exposing the VM as a service, just like how we expose any deployment or pods as a service within the Kubernetes platform. So we'll basically use that tool so that we can do certain actions through it. And it's again basically provided as a package that you can directly install it from the GitHub repository. Okay, and you can see that it has basically given me both the client as well as the server. The server version, because it's able to connect to the these CRD definition, CRD deployment that I have done, and it's basically able to connect and creates the current state actually. So next is basically what I will do. I will basically fetch a sample VM definition, and we'll basically deploy that in this platform. So this is a sample deployment. I'll just open that. Maybe I'll just do a cat here. Okay, so as you can see, this is a sample definitions which basically I have extended using the CRD, and the kind that I have basically created is a virtual machine. Normally it is pod in other case, right? And just like here, how we give the pod metadata name is just the virtual machine metadata name. This page.running is an important factor here. What it basically tells, it tells that when you actually deploy this resource, don't start this virtual machine. So normally what happens, the primary way how a container differs from a virtual machine, that containers can adapt the runtime configurations. For the virtual machines, to deploy something runtime means we have to basically reboot that particular virtual machines, or basically stop it and start it again for the configurations to take into effect. So if you just make this as true, then you tell the word controller that I don't care, you basically deploy and start the virtual machine for me. Okay, but by default it is given to false. And then here you basically mention the labels and the domain. So the domain is important because it actually specifies that what particular virtual machine resource that you are about to deploy within that particular pod. And here under the spec definitions, you would be mentioning the same as I told you, like what is the disk requirement for you, and like what are the resources. Let's say, for example, I'm just basically deploying a 64 MB, like the memory that I've given is 64 MB. Okay, but these resources can also be increased or decreased as per the requirement, just like how we normally define within the pod definition. And then under this, we define how we are going to basically mount this volume. So basically, this particular VM type is a small distro-less, it's a distro-less VM. It's basically a Cyrus VM, which has a password, which I have just basically kept it as a secret so as to mask it basically. So let's now create it actually. So I'll just create this. Okay, so you can see it basically creates as a virtual machine.keyboard.io/test_vm. Okay, and then you can basically get the information from here. Just instead of doing kubectl get pod, you just do a kubectl get VM, and you get to see this VM which is there. But if you see, it is not in a running state or any other state because it is not scheduled. So we have to basically schedule this particular VM. Okay. So to do that, so there is another resource called as VMI. So VMI is something once you schedule this resource, right? I mean, once you start this particular VM to be deployed inside a pod, what happens? This particular the CRD definitions picks up the IP for where that particular of that pod where the particular VM is deployed, and it will show you. So let us see that. So in this case, I'll be using the virtctl to do that. So it's just simple. You just do virtctl start and then the VM name. So in my case, it's just the test VM. And it is said that a VM test VM scheduled to start. Now I'll just look into this get VMS. So you can see that it is now moving to the scheduling phase. So from scheduling phase, after some time, it should move into the running phase. And it's now moving to the running phase, and it gets like scheduled onto the control, onto the correct node. So if I just see or list describe this particular test VM, how it has started. So it will basically give you the same information that it gives for a normal pod definition. Okay. All the annotations, the API version. So here is the extended one that I'm using here. And the main thing to look out for here is the active pod definition. So here you can see this is actually provided by the libvirt, this particular controller plain entity being generated. And this is where that particular VM gets deployed. and it basically gets the IP also here. And you can see here, here in this case, the Kube controller doesn't picks up this object because this is a CRD object, and this is being picked up by the virtual machine controller or the word controller as we are defining. And then basically it has started the VM. So then once I get this information, so I can just use SSH, the normal way how I basically logging into this VM. So as I told, it's a Cyrus VM. So I'll just use the Cyrus as a username and give 32.0.1.2, and it should ask me for the password. The password is already, I have marked it, and I am now inside this VM. So this is now in a VM. So if I just give free -m, it should list me the 6 MB of memory I've created. So list the OS that I'm using here. Same operations that you do inside a VM, you are doing it now, but then it is not deployed on any managed service provider, but rather you have deployed it on a Kubernetes platform, and it's just managing it as a cloud native object here. Okay, fine. Now, how a particular change within this particular VM definition react means within that VM definition actually impact this object. So let's see. Let's, for example, we'll change some definitions within this YAML file, and let's make it from memory 64 to 128. And now what I will do, I'll just apply this change in runtime. Okay, so you can see it has taken the changes in runtime and it has configured. But what happens to my VM is interesting to see here. So if I see, it says no resource found. That means it has been shut down. As I told you, any change in the configuration automatically basically stops. It basically changes within that particular object, and it stops that particular object for a VM type resource. So again, we have to start it. Start. And then we can look out here. And let's now check inside. Now, without using SSH, what I will use, I will use the virtctl command here. And so it has a very good way of going as a VNC method, just like normally what we used to do in a cloud image-baked VM. So we're doing the same thing here. Okay, it's still running. It's still coming up, and it has now come up. So I'll just give the Cirrus as the username and to go as the password. Now here, if I just see whether my change has been reflected or not, so you can see that it has basically changed it. So it has just made to 144, sorry, 128 MB of memory, and other things remains the same for it. Okay, so this is how we normally operate a VM within a cloud-based environment. So that was more from the demo part. So I'll just now quickly switch to my the slides. And so just to understand then what are this use case for using this KubeVirt as a technology. So basically we need to support, we need to run virtual machines for a development purposes. So bringing virtual machines quickly in a development workflow is not so easy, and KubeVirt leverages this and enables it to be deployed on the same orchestrator platform. We are running our own container workloads. Also, we can basically support those virtual machines, kind of like appliances, which I was saying initially, which cannot be actually lift and shift. I mean, you cannot actually make certain changes within that operating system because there are certain custom kernel, custom configurations which are most optimized to work together. You cannot actually break them. So basically, it's difficult to actually make it a kind of a distributed architecture. So for those kind of situations, KubeVirt brings it helps to basically deploy them on your orchestrator platform like Kubernetes. Also, on the longer run, KubeVirt helps to run virtual network functions, VNFs, where we think about deploying switches and routers as software entities. Okay, and these are like in recent times is of continued interest, and a lot of research has been going around it. Even at SAP, we are also trying to bring a leverage where we can actually test out our platform, which we have Gartner as one of the Kubernetes platform, and use KubeVirt to bring those workloads, which is a bit difficult to make to basically containerize and deploy as distributed services. So there are good scope of basically using this technology in the longer run, specifically if you want to create a converged infrastructure around your virtual machines and containers together. So these are some of the references that I've taken. You can always go and check out the GitHub repository. It contains good documentation. You can basically understand more about the architecture, about the workflow, and you can try out some of the basic use cases that are provided there. And kubevirt.io is the official site where you can go through certain blogs, and the videos are there where they have shown how you can basically import an image directly from the virtual machines and put it inside the virtual machines which is running inside a pod. So there are use cases around it. So that was all from my side. Any questions? Like, you can take it now.
Hi, Suman. What's the difference between Wordlet and KubeVirt? Like both are addressing the same needs. So in terms of architecture, or what is the advantage you see?
Sorry, come again. KubeVirt versus
Wordlet.
Okay, Wordlet. So basically, yeah, to a little extent, Wordlet is also serving the same purpose, but the primary requirement of KubeVirt is to leverage those workloads which are more deployed on a kind of like on data centers, on bare metal servers, right? So basically, the possibility is to extend the same native feature that you actually get in those kind of workloads running in in those environment, like any private data center environment, to use it on your existing orchestration feature on your existing orchestration platform. So that is the primary difference or the requirement in using KubeVirt here.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Suman. Thank you for driving us in having a single deployment and management plan for both containers and virtual machines, and also helping us in understanding how we can design and enable a unified platform for cloud native application, regardless of any major requirements. So with that, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Suman, if you can just make Arun as host before you leave.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.